Empires had been colonizing tribes and nations for centuries, appropriating their economies, their lands, their peoples, their governments, and their minds, in the name of religion, civilization, and westernization. This time it had been done under the subterfuge of spreading democracy. 8 men were assassinated here last week. The Land Rover slowed into the curve. Guatemalan soldiers stopped the bus at this very spot. Jorge, our Mayan to Spanish interpreter, peered over the back of his seat at Lynn Twist, who was behind him, and then at me, next to her. They dragged those 8 Mayan men off, shot and killed them, one by one. He pointed at a cluster of scrawny bushes just outside his window. Right there, last week. I stared out at the bushes. My heart raced. The Land Rover drove on. The Civil War still rages, Jorge continued. It's lasted more than 30 years. He glanced from Lynn to me. Those soldiers were trained by the U.S. military. He stared at me. To help the rich families here who want to destroy the Mayan culture and support exploitation of our resources by U.S. companies. It's the latest example of American colonialism. American colonialism. My intestines nodded. Genocide, Lynn said. She, too, was watching me. I glanced through the window on my side of the Land Rover, fighting back the sickening taste of bile. I'd been an economic hitman, an ally of those rich families Jorge talked about, a person whose job it was to promote colonialism. As I would write later in Confessions of an Economic Hitman, economic hitmen, EHMs, are highly paid professionals who cheat countries around the globe out of trillions of dollars. They funnel money from the World Bank, the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, and other foreign aid organizations into the coffers of huge corporations and the pockets of a few wealthy families who control the planet's natural resources. Their tools include fraudulent financial reports, rigged elections, payoffs, extortion, sex, and murder. They play a game as old as empire, but one that has taken on new and terrifying dimensions during this time of globalization. I should know. I was an EHM. I had officially retired from the EHM ranks in 1980, but here I was, 13 years later, back in Guatemala. I was working as a consultant to a corporation that was an integral part of the system Jorge had identified as colonialism. At the same time, during this trip, I was serving on the board of a non-profit organization that helped the Mayan people during this terrible civil war. The irony struck me. I justified my consulting work as a way to support my family. I told myself that I would convince my corporate clients to be environmentally and socially conscious of what they were doing in Guatemala and elsewhere. However, the facts about the Maya challenged my attempts at justifying my position. An estimated 200,000 Maya had been killed or disappeared by a government that was backed by Washington and U.S. corporations. Many more had fled as refugees. Dozens of villages had been razed. Families had been driven off their small farms and replaced by large American-owned or supported agribusinesses. In addition to Maya, victims also included student activists, labor leaders, and Catholic priests who participated in nonviolent movements. More people were killed in this conflict than in any other 20th century Latin American war, a fact that was unknown by most Americans. Now I was taking Lynn into the mountains that were the stronghold of the very people we EHMs had exploited and killed. Yes, genocide, I repeated. I tried to swallow away that sour taste in my mouth, tried to fight down the feelings of guilt I felt over the things I'd done and the fear of what lay ahead of us. I stared through the window at the bleak mountains and the road as we sped away from those bushes where the unforgivable had happened. Sometimes it's hard to be an American, Lynn said. She had been introduced to me as a philanthropic activist and chief fundraiser for the Hunger Project. This was before she'd written her best-selling book, The Soul of Money, received the United Nations Woman of Distinction Award, become an advisor to the Nobel Women's Institute, been featured on Oprah, and been honored with many other accolades.